How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a soon-to-be-released to Steam Early Access game called Space Tyrant. It's billed as something of a 4X game, while at the same time being a rogue-lite. So let's just jump into it. We have just a play option here, and we're taken to the mission screen almost immediately. So the idea behind this game, as we'll see pretty shortly, is that you'll have these campaigns, and these campaigns themselves are sort of what creates the rogue-lite element. So you can fail these, and then you'll have to start basically from the beginning again. So at the moment, there are like 4 different sectors here, and I have completed one mission in the burrowed fields sector. You have various different commanders. So far, I've only unlocked one. I have had the ability to unlock additional ones in the past, but I actually failed that campaign. So you have like a campaign here, right? And then you select the various missions that you think would help you advance in the campaign, while keeping in mind that if the Senate control fills up on any one of these sectors, then you'll automatically lose. So in my case, I did complete one campaign here in the burrowed fields sector, but then we also have campaigns unlocked over here in the Hive Worlds and Twisting Nebula, and the Galactic Senate sector is still locked because I haven't completed these other ones over here. So when it comes to the missions themselves, you'll see here by selecting them that they have a difficulty rating, a certain goal that you want to achieve to actually win it, and then you'll be rewarded with various artifacts that you can use to boost certain aspects of your character or clan, I guess you could call it. So I am currently the Hoplite clan. As you can see right here, I have only one perk so far because, like I said, I started over from the beginning again since I kind of lost, and it's kind of a roguelite game. And my current perk is small ships gain an additional 30% health. Right, so let's just jump into a mission, because this screen here is overall not very interesting. The mission screens themselves are where a lot of the action happens. So here we are at Hive Worlds. This is a relatively easy mission. Our goals are either to control, gain victory by controlling a certain number of planets, or obtain victory by having large amounts of crystal or playing cards which require crystal. Then you'll have like certain quirks of the world. In our case, it's very strong. It's a fortified sector. Solar winds, we don't have access to carriers, and science teams, very fast labs. So we're going to be producing a lot of science, so we'll be able to upgrade relatively quickly. If we complete this mission, we'll be given access to the Shining Scepter, which increases tyranny for capturing crystals, and then core implosion. Destroy one enemy. So this is just basically gives you a card as a reward. So there's a lot of kind of random stuff going on here, and that's a little bit loosely tied together. A lot of concepts that you wouldn't commonly find together are kind of loosely tied together in this game. So here we go. We're getting started, and we get to sort of select some of the starting equipment we're going to begin with. So we have artifacts here, and we have our deck. The deck, so far I only have one deck. I don't have my other deck unlocked. And one aspect of this is I wish the deck could be customized a bit more. At the moment, it's just a little bit too random for my taste. But then our artifacts, we can actually choose those. I have acquired a new scepter, so I can use the prison breaker +1 siege while invading prisons, or we can change our crown. So at the moment we have +5 starting tyranny. If I could switch over here to the Ruby Crown, which would add an additional 4 research when I capture a planet, which actually sounds pretty good. I just wish that I had a better cloak. So I kind of don't want to give up. Wait a minute. Okay. I just want to make sure I make the right selection here. Your commanders start with 1 power charged in combat. Yeah, so I want that perk. I would choose this Ruby perk if I did have my cloak that actually allowed me to start with more tyranny, but tyranny, I don't know, maybe not. +4 research when you capture a planet. That's kind of strong, but we're starting in a planet that has a lot of research anyway. And then here we can select our commanders. I've only unlocked one, as I've said. So let's just click start. Okay, so here we are on the actual main battle screen, campaign screen. However you view it, load times for these missions I think are a little bit excessive. Like I've seen load times taking as much as 15 seconds to actually load it up, and you'll notice that there's not a whole lot of complexity to these scenes, at least on the surface. I don't know what it looks like in the back end, that could explain some of it. Okay, so anyway, it says Senate battle, break Senate influence over this sector, accomplish one of the following, either conquer 17 planets or have 8 crystals. Let's begin. So at the moment, down here in the lower right corner, you can see we have 2 crystals, and we currently control very little. It says like control 60%. I have one of 17 planets controlled, so I need to control 16 more. So right here is my main base, and this is the home world. You'll see the little defense number next to it is how much damage it can take before it is conquered by an invading ship. The golden number to the right, it says 50. That is how much gold per turn this planet generates. And then you can see it has various other abilities, such as the ability to hire a new leader. So, and then you'll see connected to it in various other sectors, different planets. However you want to think of these, they're sort of tied to them like a spokes to a wheel. And these also have their own unique aspects to them as well. Like these 3 here are research. This one is for crystals. So the little pink number, the little number 2 in a diamond, that is actually going to give you additional crystals per turn. Then here we have a standard planet, much like my home planet. It's going to be giving me gold, or what, I forget what they call these. It's called credits as a resource, as well as it has the standard defense. All of these do have defense. And in addition to planet defense, you'll also see little ships orbiting each planet. Some planets do not have ships orbiting them, such as this planet right here, but a lot of them do. And to take over the planet, first you have to defeat the ships defending it, right? So if we take a look at it, and this is where a lot of the strategy comes into play, is deciding what planet you would want to capture first. So like I might initially be tempted to go after this planet, but then I'll notice that I can't just move it from this planet to this planet right here. And this is a difficulty because you only get 1 movement per turn. So in other words, like moving from my home planet to this planet is what I can do in 1 turn. And you'll notice that as you go along, turns are relatively valuable. They're not something that you want to waste. Okay, so let's select our ship, and as you can see, it now opens the option for a shipyard. Whatever planet you're currently on, as long as you control it, you will have access to the shipyard, so you don't actually have to move back to specific planets to be able to use it. And by clicking on the shipyard, we'll be presented here with our current battalion. So these are the units that are in my current armada, I guess you could call it. We got frigates, which deal a lot of damage but are relatively weak in defense. We have the destroyers, which seem to have a pretty decent defense, but they don't deal a whole lot of damage. Like you compare it 44 versus 60. And then we have the cruisers, which deal a fair amount of damage, have a fair amount of armor, and generally they provide a lot of support to neighboring units, especially when it comes to, you get them promoted a little bit, and they can provide both healing and protection to units that flank them on either side. So at the moment we have 1 destroyer, 1 frigate, and 1 cruiser. I'm going to add an additional destroyer to the front here and an additional frigate to the rear. So there we have our armada fully decked out, and I think the planet that we should go after first is probably a planet with the least amount of defense. Like we want to be able to conquer it on the first turn, and we'll explain a little bit more about that later. So here, select a ship again and send it after this tech spot, this tech node, this tech planet right here. And as you can see, we have our first combat encounter with DJ Blaze. Click to begin. At the bottom of the screen here, we can control how fast the battle goes, and here we get to choose a tactic before the battle itself begins. Now, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, is that these tactics are always randomized, which means it's a complete crapshoot as to whether or not you'll get a useful one. And that can make battles less strategic than they should be, I think. But let's take a look at some of the options we have here. Dispel friendly. It removes all effects from friendly ships. So in other words, if the enemy is actually applying detrimental effects to my ships over on the left side of the screen, I could actually remove those. Armageddon destroys all but a handful of ships on each side. Obviously, I wouldn't want to do this because my ships currently outnumber their ships. And then we can also destroy all sky fighters. So I think we're just going to take Dispel Friendly. None of these 3 are particularly useful for my current setup here, but we would just have to choose Dispel Friendly. And I slowed it down so we have a bit of an opportunity to take a look at some of what's going on here. So as you can see, they started firing first. I can fire right now as well. I'll use some power to fire off a volley. My cruiser here has been breached, so I have to spend some more power to heal that breach. I have enough power to do another volley shot with that one. And this is the thing you'll notice quite frequently with this game's battles per se. They're not very, you can't control much about them. So they're going to be shooting at whatever targets they choose or they deem to be suitable. I don't know how the algorithm works, and there's no way that you can fix it in one way or another. So in other words, if they decide to target 3 different ships instead of focusing on one, you know, that is just what happens. And this has happened a lot to me as well, where the person that I'm fighting against, they will all target my ships individually. Like they'll procedurally take out one by one, and then my ships are just blanketing all of their ships. So their ships are taking a little bit of damage, but they're taking it gradually over a period of time, and they can still continue to shoot at me with those damaged ships, whereas they're targeting singular ships of mine, which means they're eliminating them and eliminating my firepower. And I noticed this like when I got into more difficult scenarios. I really don't know how to control for it, because the problem there is what ships your ships choose to shoot at and vice versa is completely determined by the game. You have no input into that. You can just augment it by applying your power, the little lightning symbol, to the ships that you deem to have the abilities that would best work towards winning the battle. Okay, but we have defeated the orbiting ships. So as you can see, now we're the ships in orbit and we can invade the planet. Let's go ahead and do that. So here we go. Another one of those aspects to the game where you have very little actual input into whether or not it works. So in other words, in this case, I have a die here, and we're going to decide, this die is going to decide whether or not I'll capture this planet. So when you roll a die, it's going to impact the amount of shield points that are taken away from the planet. So in other words, if I roll a 5, it would take 5 shield points away. If I roll a 1, it will take 1 shield point away. And as you can imagine, this can vary quite greatly because each die roll is going to cost you a turn. In my case, I invaded here this turn, so it's kind of considered all one turn. It's like part of the actions, but like consecutive turns, I'm going to have to expend an entire turn just to roll this dice. So let's think about this. If we have a planet that has a shield with 6 on it, and we're going to have to roll a die, most likely the first time we won't get a 6, and our odds will continue to improve. But I could spend, if I was really unlucky, I could spend as many as 6 turns trying to capture a single planet. And so like that's one of those, like even that, I was like, I only rolled a 2. But that's one of the problems that I've had with this game, is because, you know, if you're billing out a bit as a strategy game, as a 4X game, I'm not exactly sure if 4X works, because doesn't that mean like expand, explore, conquer, and something else? Build. It's like expand, build, expand, explore, conquer, something like that. There isn't a whole lot of building per se in this game, so I'm not sure if 4X works, but I mean, that's sort of the category that they're fitting it into. And yet there are a lot of these randomized events to the game that makes it a lot less strategic. And as somebody who values strategy in games, because that means that, you know, you're not set up to the whims of chance, right? Okay, now that we've captured this planet, we are given an event. Sometimes you will get an event from capturing a planet, sometimes you won't. I'd say more likely than not, you'll get an event. Once again, events are pretty random. So what do we have here? We are given 4 options for this doppelganger event. This is investigating reports that you yourself have been spotted at various points on this planet, brings you face to face with somebody who could easily be your twin. So you're asked, you know, what do you want to do with your supposed twin here? You can publicly execute them or hire them as a body double. The other 2 options are locked because we don't have the traits that would be required to access them. The problem is, you know, we're not really given any idea of what the effects of selecting any of these events or options would be. And the reason that this is an issue for me is because they're always the same. So in other words, if I play one campaign and I choose hire them as a body double, and then I play another campaign and I choose that exact same option, the result is going to be the same. The event doesn't change. So in other words, it becomes this kind of thing where you'll get better at the game as you just memorize these events. Like a certain event pops up and you say, okay, well, I remember last time I did publicly execute them, that worked out badly, let's try a different event. So you'll get better at the game as you memorize these rather obscure events, or the rather obscure options to these events. And then you realize what is actually positive and what results in a negative event. And I think this could easily be more strategic just by letting the players know what will happen because of these events. Because at the end of the day, you're still given a set of events here to choose from. And if you have like 2 bad events, you're going to have to choose them. And there might have to be some rework done, where like you would, in this case, be given an option that's obviously better versus one that's not obviously better. But I think it could definitely be worked out in a way that would be a lot more strategic and give the player a lot more control without having to just sort of memorize these events as they pop up, or then sit there with a spreadsheet off to the side that lists all the events out. So that way you can always choose the optimal ones, and that way you can actually have a hope, like a snowball's chance in hell of actually getting through the campaign, because it gets harder and harder. And then when you throw this element of chance into it all the time, it makes it a lot less likely you're ever going to complete it. But we're going to do publicly execute them. It says there can only be one Space Tyrant. A public spectacle will discourage any impersonation. And guess why I chose that? Because I've seen this event before, and in the past I've been backstabbed by the other option. So I'm always going to choose this one now, unless I unlock those last 2, then I could test with them. But you know, that's all there is to it then, right? Because now that I have the formula, now that I know the results, I'm just going to choose that option again and again, right? The safe option, because we want to get through this. We want to make this random world predictable, or as predictable as we possibly can. And by choosing events that we know the outcome of, that will get us there. Okay, so that pretty much ends this turn. We have moved all of our ships, and we could also play cards. This is a completely optional, but we don't have to. So right now we have the ability to end our turn. Let's take a look at the cards, because the cards are a rather interesting aspect to the game. Your cards are drawn randomly at the start of the turn. They use crystals down here. There are planets that you can control, like the one right here, that will give you crystals per turn, additional crystals per turn. And they all have effects. So in other words, like I have a tightened grip card here. It says plus 25 credits a turn for 4 turns. And I also have a fast refit. So in other words, if I play this card, I'll be able to add one cruiser to a fleet. So in other words, like you can have multiple fleets. Here's my main fleet, I guess you could say. And by playing this card, I could add a cruiser to it. At the moment, my fleet does not need any additional ships, so that would simply go to waste. So I think we'll be playing the tightened grip instead. The additional credits will come in handy, especially as in the beginning of the game we don't have control of that many plants that will allow us to get a sizable income per turn. And one other thing that should be noted is this bar in the right lower corner. It is the tyranny bar, and every turn it decays a bit, so due to unrest. So you can see right now my tyranny is currently at 78, and unrest is going to subtract 10 per turn from that number. If that number reaches 0, then we lose. The number is increased when we perform certain actions like taking over colonies or planets, as well as bombarding them. Okay, let's begin the next turn. As you can see, my tyranny decayed a little bit, and it plays through much like most turn-based games would. We got our card there, we got our resources, you saw we got some tech, we got some gold, and then we're on to the next turn. So now I have to decide what would be the next most advantageous planet to attack. Probably this one here, because at the moment I'm looking for options that will almost always result in success. So in other words, this is an interesting one. I'm kind of tempted to get the barracks, because the great thing about this planet, the barracks will allow you to roll an additional die when attacking planets. So that means that planets with high shields, like this one, 5, instead of taking 2 turns to conquer it, I might be able to do it in 1 turn. So let's go ahead and try that. Obviously, there are quite a few ships here patrolling it. Well, there are more than usual, not quite a few. There are only 4 there. I've had it in more advanced difficulty levels where they actually set you up against huge armadas that had like double the ships that you had, and it was just a complete and utter massacre. It's like 3 turns in and you're already running up with your 6 little ships or 5 little ships against huge armadas that are just roaming around the place. So you really are given this feeling of being underpowered when you're playing the more difficult scenarios. That was a level 3 scenario, I think there was. Like there were difficulties from 1 to 5, and that was level 3, and already I felt quite weak in the face of that kind of barrage. Invasive program, where we have to choose our tactics, and once again you'll notice that they have changed completely. These are all different tactics, I believe. We might have had Armageddon before, yeah, I think, but okay, we also had this one, Clear Sky. We also had that one, but we have a new one here, Invasive Program, Ship Fire Rate Reduced by 70%. So I guess we're going to choose that one, and we're going to get started here. Let's fire off a volley or 2. You can see he's using his power. One thing I would like to see improved is the ability to see what powers ships have available to them. Let's tell these to stop that. Wow, I am taking a lot of damage here. He has abilities that, see, I'm just not aware of, and it's hard to figure them out, like what they are. I can hover over his fighter squad, and it says fighter squad launch when fighter squad from the command ship. But a lot of times it's difficult to see what kind of effects are actually being applied. Like right here, we can see a little stopwatch. This is invasive program, ship fire reduced by 70%. That was the one I applied. But in the past, like I've had difficulty actually figuring out what was what. Let's fire that meteorite. We might actually have an end to the game right here. I actually might get defeated, which would be a bit shocking considering that this is supposed to be a relatively easy scenario. But I haven't been paying a bunch of attention. There, we got the inspired perk. It doesn't say, like I'm hovering over it. I saw it got applied to the ship, but nothing ever happened. I couldn't hover over it and see what inspired actually meant. But we did manage to win that one. So these are more like constructive critique of some certain aspects of the game, because the game is still going. It's going to be in early access. Like I want to make no mistake of it. This game is currently not. It's in beta at the moment. It's going to be coming out on early access in a couple of days. So, yeah, there's a lot to improve yet. Now that's why I'm saying these are aspects that I think definitely could be improved. But we have successfully defeated that roaming, that patrolling, orbiting, I suppose, that orbiting fleet. So let's go ahead and click to invade. What do you think? We have pretty much a 50% chance of winning this here. What do you think? We'll win or lose? We win! Yes! It's always nice to win at 50% odds. Actually, I think we had a little bit more than 50%. Oh, never mind. So here we have another event, planetary improvement. We can hack the planet or it's not worth the trouble. What I found is a lot of times when you hack the planet, it ends up blowing up. So if you have a really good planet, you might not want to hack it. So I'm going to say not worth the trouble. And it just basically says you leave the planet ready for further oppression or whatever. It basically doesn't change it at all. If you do hack it, it can add an ability to it, or it can actually end up subtracting abilities from it. So if you're trying to play it really safe, you'll probably choose the more conservative option there. Then we have cards here. We're ready for more research. So research is another aspect of tech. So in other words, like we have control of this one planet right here that generates 8 research per turn. In the upper top of the screen, basically, you can see we have 13 of 10 tech. So in other words, we have a research to choose. So let's go ahead and choose that. And you're just basically given one of 2 or 3 options usually. So we have the ability to enable rapid reloading of missile ports, allows for more shots, plus 3 shots per volley on our cruisers. And then we also have plasma furnace, which affects the destroyers. Reactor improved. It just basically upgrades these stats. Like you don't have to pay too much attention to the wording of it. Just take a look at the bar that they're increasing and see how much it's being increased by. I personally like the cruisers, so I'm going to go for that upgrade. And then we could start the next turn. We could play a card. You're only allowed to have 3 cards in your hand at the time. Otherwise, you can't end the turn without discarding one. Like you can discard one by dragging it over there. We don't want to do that at the moment. But as you can probably see, a lot of these concepts are kept relatively simple. The research, we don't have to worry about an entire big research tree. The commerce, we don't have to worry about actually building buildings on our planets to generate it or improving the planets or anything like that. It just keeps the action flowing. It's very straight to the point, which I think is a great thing, because if you're looking for sort of, if you're sort of interested in strategy type games, but at the same time you don't want to have to spend, let's say, 20 hours completing a game of Civilization, because that happens a lot of the time. So this game, I have found that I've been completing it in around about 30 to 45 minutes. So here we go, processing the turn for the Senate. We're on to turn 3. And with this game, I've found that I can get through missions in a relatively short amount of time for a game that's being billed as strategy, right? So 30 to 45 minutes, you know, a standard match time for any of the more common MOBAs. And that's what you have now for a game that's more strategic, or being built as more strategic. That is one thing. Like, I'm a little bit worried about expectations with this game, because when you say strategy, how tolerant are players of strategy games for lots of luck elements in the games? I don't know for sure. But it makes me question a little bit the billing of the game. Like, maybe we're setting up expectations here that are not, we're not going to meet those expectations necessarily, because the game is a little bit different from what you're setting it up to be. Could be wrong about that. Okay, so here we are. As you noticed before on the previous turn, my commander did upgrade, so now we have actually a whole bunch of room. We have a lot more room here in our armada. So what we're going to do, if I can ever get that sentence out, is going to introduce another cruiser. So that's 80. I don't think we'll be able to fill this out, but we are going to get 2 frigates for the back, and let's see here, we'll be able to get 1 destroyer. So like that. So now we have a much more formidable armada, and as my armada gets more experience by fighting battles, we will be able to upgrade it further. We'll gain access to additional slots to add more ships to the armada. We'll gain access to additional units that we can put in there, such as the dreadnought right here. If I win 5 flawless space battles, basically a flawless space battle would be when you win the battle without losing any ships. So let's jump to this one last asteroid, I think, because that's the next obvious place to jump to. You'll see we don't have connections to really any other planets at the moment, so this is the obvious location to jump to. So let's go on over there, and let's see if maybe we can get a flawless victory here to get us one closer to that dreadnought. I doubt it though. Like, these are ships with special abilities. These all have defensive shields on them, which basically makes them twice as tough as the average ship. So a little bit probably not going to happen. And here we have a lot of mediocre tactics again, which is a shame. There's some good tactics out there, like heal a ship, like remove a ship. That's good for if you're removing a ship that's about to be destroyed. Destroy an enemy ship by 50%. But I'm going to get massacred here to quite some extent. Steal that breach. The battles themselves, you know, it's pretty relaxed, and you just sit back and watch what's happening. You can throw in various tactics that you think would be most strategic or most beneficial. Let's seal the breach there. There we go. Volley. That's what we were using our power for here at the moment. For some reason, I'm messing up my speech, aren't I? But as you can see, like, that ship has the power shield on it. But this time, it seems to be going down relatively quickly, so this should be another flawless victory. Let's check it out. So mediocre. As you can see, yes, indeed, the card increased a little bit more, so we're one step closer to getting our dreadnought ship. And dreadnought ships are pretty cool. So let's invade this planet, and now you'll notice after capturing that prison colony, we actually, or was it a prison colony? It was like a barracks or something. Now you actually have 2 dice to roll, so it's possible we'll get 2 1s and still not win, but it's more likely that we'll get something good. So here we go. We got a 4 because of the 2 dice that we rolled. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it through, right? We would have got a 2, and we would have to wait another turn before we could attack again. So it's important, you know, you have to think about that when you go ahead and sort of plot your route through the galaxy, like what planets are you going to take over in what order, because it matters. Like with this research station, I could have gone for this one instead, but I might not have got it in the first turn. So then you think about it, you're sitting there, you're using turns to try to reduce the defenses of 4 down to 0. And all of a sudden, your tyranny meter continues to go down every turn you waste there trying to bring the defenses down is a turn that you're not conquering a planet to increase your tyranny meter. And then once that hits 0, then you know it's game over. Since this is a high-tech map, as I mentioned before. We have access to another technology. So here we can go. Like this is how you get it. This is how you get technologies. You'll just be given an option of 2 or 3. You're not going to be having to worry about an entire tech tree. It's very quick. It's very fast paced, and I think that's what's important. There isn't, maybe that is one positive to having as much randomness in this world as there is it means that you can't pull the usual tactic in a lot of strategy games of really plotting out your path into the future, which can take a fair amount of time. Like if you think about researching in civilization games, for example, and probably not the best example because those trees are relatively fixed, but there's a lot more thought that has to go into it compared to this game where you are just given a couple of options and say choose the option that best fits your current situation, right? I think there is value in that for sure. So here we go. I'm going to be choosing the regeneration field. This text is not particularly nice, as you can see. Apparently the N did not fit with the regeneration, so it's just sort of put on the next line. So they're just like little rough edges like this that the game could still use and need improvement on. But by and large, it's very good for a beta. Like by and large, it's very good. I think very solid already for a game that's still like it's going to be released in early access within the next couple of days. So we're going to choose regeneration. Very cool. Now, when we use regeneration on our cruiser ships, let's go to the shipyard. So the cruiser ships, I'm calling them cruisers. Yeah, they're called cruisers. When we use regeneration on them, not only will they regenerate the health of the cruiser themselves, but they'll also regenerate the health of any ships adjacent to them. So like right here and right here. So that's pretty cool. I really do like the cruisers, but I haven't experimented as much with the frigates or the ones that can carry units themselves. Yeah, so one aspect of the game that I hope does change is the fact that I can't save. So in other words, let's say, granted, it's only 30 to 45 minutes, right, to complete one of these campaigns. Like you can see the map here. This is how big the map is. That's how many sectors it has. You get a basic idea of how long this might take. One problem is what happens if I can't complete it in 15 minutes, right? If let's say I have 30 minutes to myself, say, okay, maybe I can complete it in 30 minutes. Okay, no, I haven't finished it in 30 minutes. This means it's going to probably take 45 minutes to 60 minutes now, and I need to get back to work or something, but I can't save the game. The only option here is to surrender or go back to the main menu. If you go back to the main menu, you're going to lose all the progress that you just went through. So that could be like a loss of the last 30 minutes. I think that could be changed. I think that should be changed, and it could very well might be in the future because, once again, as I said, the game is in beta at the moment. So let's go back to the main menu. We'll forfeit that progress, and that should give you a pretty good idea of what Space Tyrant is about. Now, as a disclaimer, I was actually just emailed a key for this game by the developer who said, like, you want to play it? Go ahead. Which was very nice of them. I appreciate the proactive stance because then I don't have to do the emailing myself. So if you think that is too much of a conflict of interest, whatever. But that is Space Tyrant, and it was one of those games where I wasn't expecting it to be as fun as I ended up, as much fun as I ended up having with it, because the theme of it, like space does not necessarily appeal to me. So it might not be the game that I would go and search out. So that's why it's kind of nice that somebody would approach me and say, hey, we have this game that we think would align with your interests. And I think, the theme might not necessarily attract me in the beginning, but I think it is mechanically quite solid, even if I don't necessarily appreciate the amount of randomness that is introduced through chance-like systems in it. But yeah, overall, it's one of the better games that I've had the pleasure of playing recently. So that is a Space Tyrant. Be sure to look for it on Steam Early Access if you're interested in what it has to offer. It should be coming out in the next couple of days, I believe on Wednesday, July 19th, I believe, of 2017. So that is Space Tyrant. Once again, Space Tyrant, thank you very much for watching, as always, and I hope to see you next time.